How sport reinforces and challenges gender ideology. What is gender ideology? Coakley defines gender ideology as the interrelated ideas and beliefs that are widely used to define masculinity and femininity, identify people as male or female, evaluate forms of sexual expression, and organize social relationships. Coakley also identifies a two-sex classification system where a person either falls into the role of a male or a female. Tradition of sport. When men created organized sport, there were no place for women. Sports were male territory, which included physical contact, competition, and conquest. Women were thought to be too fragile and weak to participate. To this day, sport continues to be, 1. Male-dominated, so that ability and performance qualifications are associated with manhood and men. Therefore, being qualified in sports means possessing masculine characteristics. 2. Male-identified, so that what men value is assumed to be valued by all mankind, making sports a man's world that revolves around men and manhood. Therefore, women's sports must be identified explicitly, such as the Women's World Cup or the Women's Final Four. And 3. Male-centered, so that men and men's lives are the expected focus of attention. Therefore, there are few women in media sports represented in sports stories, legends, records, events, Hall of Fames, and media programming. Reinforcing gender ideology. So society has defined sport by drawing a distinct line where men are on one side and women are on the other when it comes to sports and which ones they should play. There's a stigma against men who want to participate in more feminine sports, such as figure skating or cheerleading or ballet or dance or anything like that, whereas women are becoming more accepted when they want to play more aggressive sports such as hockey or like mixed martial arts. Media coverage. Men's sports are covered more frequently in the media than women's sports, and when women's sports are covered, they're classified as women's sports, such as the World Cup versus the Women's World Cup, or NCAA Final Four versus the Women's Final Four. There are also more male commentators in sport than females, and when there are female commentators, they're often talked down to or condemned for a perceived lack of knowledge. An example of this is just recently Cam Newton scoffed and insulted a female reporter for asking him about passing routes, and he basically laughed at her because he was like, what do you know about passing routes? You're a female, you've never played the sport before. There's also a pay gap. So not only do women get paid less in the normal workforce, but also in professional sport. A solid example of this is the U.S. women's soccer team, who have been campaigning for equal pay for years now compared to the men's team. They win more games, they've produced better outcomes, but yet they still get paid significantly less than the men's team. Challenging gender ideology. So Title IX has granted women equal opportunity in regards to collegiate athletics. There has to be an equal number of women's teams and men's teams on a college campus, which has resulted in some universities having to phase out their men's programs to meet these requirements. An example of this is Vanderbilt and Western Kentucky have phased out men's soccer. They no longer have men's soccer on campus because they had football, which put their men's sports teams one sport over than the women's. The presence of women in male-dominated sports. Women are breaking down barriers and entering sports that were until recently considered too masculine. This includes hockey, mixed martial arts, and NASCAR. There's now a Women's National Hockey League. Ronda Rousey is a huge name in mixed martial arts for women. And Danica Patrick is a NASCAR racer. She's the only woman in the NASCAR right now, and that's a huge deal. There's a rising percentage of young women participating in sport. And this is because of these women who are now making names and making waves in these masculine sports. And so young girls have role models to look up to, and their way is being paved for them to get out there and to participate and play, and they're not looked down upon. In the 2012 Olympics, there were no male-only sports, and the U.S. team actually had more women than men on their team. Sport has come a long way in the integration and inclusion of women. I believe that sport is challenging gender ideologies more than being reinforced, but as long as there are male-dominated aspects of sport and it's a men's world, that some of these gender ideologies will always be reinforced.